Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from India, Mr. Anil P. Gupta. Anil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. Anil is the principal partner with India Accelerator. He's a senior advisor with Three Lines VC. He's the managing partner and CEO of AN Corporate Transformation. And he has earlier spent time as the president of Reliance Infrastructure, the former president of Honeywell International, and a global marketing executive with GE Energy USA. So Anil, before we talk about transformation, tell me a little bit about your own journey in brief, and especially your focus on the Indian startup ecosystem.
Thanks, Ashutosh. So it's a interesting journey, frankly. Some accident, some planned. I started my career as a design engineer in NTPC, designing power plants, and then I moved into multinationals like AV, the European multinational, headquartered in Baden and Zurich. And then I moved to G, which was a game changer predominantly because in G I led India, then I was moved to Africa and Middle East, Dubai. I had roles in Asia Pac, and then I had a global role in US. So cut across the whole world. And I returned back to India to head Honeywell, which again was a very interesting tech-based thing, and we're trying to build a big organization, big thing here. And the infrastructure was very interesting. Building metros, C-Link. I built the Bombay Metro. I was involved with Delhi Underground Metro, airport C-Link. So I moved there. And 2012, I took a sabbatical, and I got pulled in accidentally in the startup world by some of the people. Very active. So I started a fund with some people on health start, and then got pulled in the tie, where I was pulled as a mentor, as an advisor, as a jury member. And then it's been a big journey because interesting when you talk about giving back to society. I mean, one of my biggest things was when I was working corporate, I was very active in the boards. Post-corporate, I was in the boards of many companies, right? And many what you call family-owned businesses, Ambani's, Reliance, NCC, other places, right? And then multinational like GE and Honeywell. So, and then when I moved out, then I was working with SMEs and family-owned businesses. But startup opened a whole new, world basically, because you see those young entrepreneurs. I mean, creating, disruptions across, and more creating jobs. I mean, job seeker versus job creators, and then huge impact in the Indian ecosystem. Now, India is number 3 in the world now in the startup world, right? So I think that's where the journey came across.
Fascinating. Yeah. And how do you see the Indian startup ecosystem and the involvement of the corporate sector in these?
Very interesting. So when I was in Honeywell and GE, one of our jobs in India, we had research centers, technology centers, was basically to look at, areas and startups which can add to value in our businesses. Well, healthcare would be health tech, right? Similarly, manufacturing. So corporates by nature are very keen to either you develop in your research centers or technology centers, or you just go out and figure out, what are the young startups which can really add value to your stuff, right? So I think one of the biggest thing which is happening in India, and which was always obviously in US and other part of the world, is with this huge startup ecosystem, whether it's fintech, health tech, agri-tech, manufacturing, deep tech. It's a great, exciting for in corporates to look at, to collaborate or to acquire or to do an M&A or to enable these startups, which also reinforces the whole ecosystem in India. So I think that's a great discussion. And I being from corporate, when you go back to startups, one thing of startups is they know how to build great products, right?
Correct.
They don't know how to build great companies. So the product company gap is where I think corporates can help a lot.
Well said. You've got such a vast experience,
Yeah.
but today I thought we'll focus on transformation because you're also the managing partner and CEO of AN Corporate Transformation. My first question relating to transformation, Anil, is how do you define corporate transformation and why is it essential for businesses in today's rapidly changing environment? And from the startup world, since you're involved there, I would imagine it's also called pivot.
Yes, pivot and perseverance. Okay. Yeah. When I came back to India and to head Honeywell, and then slowly I got into, then I moved to Reliance, right, as a group president. One thing I realized, and then I was dealing with lots of family-owned businesses, SMEs, all sort of stuff, and I clearly believe that there was a complete need in terms of transformation of the Indian SMEs and even NCC was a big company, family-owned businesses, because what happens, ownership and management get confounded. So family people think that I'm the owner, I'm the best manager, right? And I remember working, I was in the board of NCC, and I was helping transform the 8,000 crore NCC company into a professionally run organization. Similarly, there was a family company, Janita, which had the first gen. So what happens is, you know what you know, right? You go from point A to point B.
Sure.
If you go with the same road, you reach the same destination. Other problem which I found, and one of the companies which I worked with was very into sports cars, right? I said, city driving, you have a Honda City, you have you can have drive there, but you want to go to Himalayas, that has to change to SUVs, right? Which is called the organization capacity, and the driver has to be more skilled. That's called management capacity building, right? So the transformation requires two discussions. One, obviously, the organization capacity building as well as the management capability building. So, and the why need transformation obviously is to make sure you go to the next level of your growth, whether it's 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. Competition's way tough. The advent of digitization and technology, there's huge disruption happening. So if you're not on the cutting edge and in terms of profit management, and if you're not transforming yourself continuously, you're in big problem.
Well said. But the other aspect, Anil, is that, most human beings like status quo, maybe even status quo ante.
Yes.
How do you handle when you go in as a change agent invited by maybe promoters or boards? How do you handle resistance to change, to transform?
So, in G, we all had to go to Six Sigma. And I'm a master black belt, right? Of G, and because in G, if you want to get promoted to executive band, you have to be a master black belt. And one of the discussions, there was always change management is equal to two factors. One is quality of change, but most important is acceptance of change. And acceptance is a cultural part. You may have the best intervention quality, which is 10 out of 10, but acceptance is 0, 10 into 0 is 0. Right? Or acceptance can be motivation discussion, right? So I think the biggest problem of change management is culture, is human being,
right?
And that's where our main focus is, because change action process is basically quality of change to acceptance of change or motivation change. So our biggest focus is how to manage the change management, and there are a number of ways to do it. Obviously, first is basically the vision. What you're trying to achieve.
Right.
A purpose beyond profit. Everybody knows that I'm here to make money or for the company, but what is the purpose of the company, right? I mean, look at Tesla. They want to move to sustainable. They don't talk about the best cars, right? Talk Apple. I just want to have the great product, the best product, technologically, blah blah blah, right? So first is a common vision. We call it shared vision, and then obviously you'll have to build processes and structures to align that. Critically, you have to also identify who are the three levels of people, who are the detractors, right? Because this also creates disruption in people's, not only comfort zone, but also the job roles. Right? I mean, why I do not change? Because there's a threat to my job, my existence, my so-called informal power structure, right? So the detractors, people who are neutral, and people who are promoters. And one thing we call is stakeholder management. So how do you reinforce promoters? How do you bring neutral to promoters? And how do you actually neutralize detractors? And then there's a reward and recognition concept. There's a a punitive action, there's a incentive action. So a number of things have to be done together all across, right?
Well
But
said.
cultural is a big discussion.
Well said. So let me now move to the question on culture then, How can organizations build a culture of transformation?
So that's a really tough one. That
Absolutely.
depends on where the organization is, right? And
Correct.
I break into three parts. I mean,
Yeah.
one part is corporate,
Yeah.
which is the big corporate. It could be MSC, because every organization has its own DNA. I mean, a G would have his own culture, Honey will have his own culture. But I think the biggest thing is the boards, because I've been the boards, because the boards have to drive the whole process across. Because once a board really focuses, and then you need to have the right board also, right, to help the cultural change, help the change management, ensure this. It's not only just change, it's sustainability of change. You change and up somebody you revert back to old ways, right? How to sustain that, right? Just like with DMAC, 6 Sigma, define, measure, analyze, improve, but control. How do you control them? The improve part, right? So first, I would think it was the thing has to start from the boards itself. So and then drive the discussion, like I clearly said, in terms of your performance appraisals, in terms of your values, mission, vision, value statement, in terms of punitive action, roles. So the number of factors have to be taken. The second is a family-owned business, which is a tough one. Because the family-owned businesses, first gen doesn't want to let go. The second gen doesn't, align itself, and the family thinks I know everything, right? So that is, and also the family-owned businesses it gets involved on a personal basis. If they have 3 brothers, then their family gets involved, right? In the whole power struggle and family struggle. So that's a little more complex, because it has a very big discussion on that. And then startups, obviously, I told you the product company gap discussion is. How do you help to build the process? So again, I think there are a number of ways to the number of levers you have to work on. It'll not happen overnight, and it has to be sustainable.
Absolutely, I agree. And when an organization calls you in to support them to transform, based on your experience, what are some of the common mistakes you have observed organizations make while attempting to make a transformation?
So one is what you call a speed trap. So again, I said I want to go to Himalayas, but I'll still use Honda City. Right. So the organization wants to move fast, but they have not built the capability and the capacity to achieve that. Right. So that's the first discussion I always say is based on, I do a benchmarking where we are, where we need to be, and how to get there. That's 3 simple questions, right? And that comes right from the organization design aspects. I mean, I use balanced scorecard. It's a very interesting discussion. Norton and Kaplan build that across, right? So you need to have a strong human capital, a strong IT capital, and a strong culture, married to strong processes, whether it's product, technology process, with the customer process, with the operation and societal, will deliver the right result, right? In terms of customer needs, will result the financial side. Right and both, we call it backward imaging, rear view mirror, right? We say, oh, well, this numbers don't look good. What happened? Right? We focus on the effect, not the cause. But the forward imaging discussion, we focus on the cause, which will impact the effect, right? So I think there are ways to look at how to work both ways. So I think the biggest thing is the organization capacity, capability, the speed trap. Want to do too much without building the right, structures and processes in place, and that becomes a mismatch. This gets torn apart. They don't get results what they want to, and then frustration starts and becomes a negative, discussion there.
And I've spoken to many people on transformation, and I've often asked this question: that where does accountability lie? People say that, oh, it's the CEO. Some people say it's the leadership. You talk to the CEO, he says, well, I've done all the work. Now it's my CXO level who has to do it. What are your thoughts?
I've been on both sides. Okay.
And is why I'm asking these questions, the guru of transformation.
I'll tell you what happened. I mean, when I was working in multinationals, and one thing about American companies is it's always an asking organization.
Correct.
Everybody's first name base. Say, hey, Anil, what do you think we should do? Right.
Correct.
So that discussion always takes place. And when I joined Reliance, it was a telling organization. Tell, right? Never asking. I remember I was building the Bombay Metro. I was involved in building the Mumbai Metro, right? And I just arrived, and a business review was taking place, and the business leader was heading the metros. The big boss is saying, "Ye ho jayega, ye ho jayega," right? So I asked and I was watching carefully, and then I just kept quiet. And then I asked him after the big boss left. I said, "That's not possible. A child is born in 9 months, 7 months dismature, 2 months is stillborn. I mean, you can't do a 5-year project in 2 years, right? I mean, 3 years. That's a technical aspects." And interestingly, this is a statement which is very profound on me. Sab gali to khana hai, baad mein kha lenge. But that is a one big bro. I say you've impacted the working capital, you've impacted the whole. You're talking of 75 lakhs per day, right? I mean, you have machinery, plant and machinery, people, labor, the right of ways. It's a big impact, right? And when I started moving to boards of family members, I always said that the problem with you guys as leaders, you only tell, you don't ask. So when there's an earthquake, you're at the epicenter feels it, the guy at the field, but you at the site, you don't feel it. And by the time you hear about it and get the ground reality, then it's too late. And that's what happened in a lot of these projects, family businesses which happen, right? So I think that is very critical. You need to be built an asking organization instead of telling organization.
Very interesting. My next question.
Yeah, okay,
sorry, go ahead, please.
There was a quote, I think by Apple, right? You hire people for them to tell you what to do. You don't hire people for you to tell them what to do, right?
Correct.
You build people, and people build businesses. It is a very different. When I came back from USA and I worked across Middle East, Dubai, and all these places, this was a very interesting discussion, always on my mind. This
that's
one-way
very powerful, very powerful comment.
One-way direction discussion. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
My next question is on the role of technology. Anil, you've been in technology-led businesses for a long time. How do you believe technology will be able to play a role in the transformation of the world? And how can we ensure it benefits the world?
Yeah, Ashutosh, this is very interesting. We are in the era of technology, right? The industrial revolution is gone. We are the thing. I mean, the internets have come in, the social media is there. I mean, the mobile systems are there, right? And then you have the big impacts of financial crisis. You had COVID, you had this. And at the end of the day, technology is going to be the next. I mean, now we're talking of AI, ML, chat GPT, robotics, drones have become little less discussion, right? But you can't stop it, right? And if you are not ahead of the curve, then you are a laggard. And technology has its positives. I mean, whether it's productivity, right? Whether it's what you call fatigue in terms of job or some jobs which are not, safety, right? So it creates a lot of different set of things. I mean, health tech, precision medicine, focused therapy, right? You don't have non-invasive, which is different, right? So that's agri-tech. I mean, you look at what is happening in Indian agriculture through technology, right? So, I mean, creating more productivity, more livelihood, more economic paradigm shift, right? So I look at technology as the paradigm shift. Of course, there are discussions on what are digital natives and non-digital natives. But, I think what has happened with COVID, India, with a lot of work being, focused in terms of UPIs, payments, digital India, I think things have dramatically changed.
Correct.
But yeah, you said it may impact jobs, but I think it's an evolution of the level of jobs, and you'll have to keep up with the skill sets, right? So I think safety is a huge deal now. It really saves people from industrial and different other aspects.
And therefore, my follow-up question for you is that how does one measure the success of a corporate transformation project? And what are some of the key performance indicators that you would track?
So again, I made a statement. When we look at transformation, we have 3-level discussion: where we are, where we need to be, and how to get there. Now, what we want to achieve is where we need to be, right? I mean, and it's the number of discussions on this. I mean, obviously the financials always there. I need to be 3x, 4x. I need to transform myself to digital transformation, right? And then how I can look at those aspects of discussion, right? I have to make sure my process is 6 Sigma level of the process capabilities improve. So you'll have to define what are the key factors in terms of transformation. I mean, digital transformation is one aspect which everybody knows which is happening, right? Organization transformation is another discussion. Professionalizing, I mean, from making a more profitable company, assuming it's a family-owned discussion, right? And then what's the level I need to grow 2x, 3x, 4x in the discussion? Most importantly, what are the things I need to also do to ensure that I manage my risk? We have seen all these COVID issues, and these are black swan event. You can't do much about. But now, even in the boards, I remember I used to head the ERM, Enterprise Risk Management Committee, and NCC and the audit committees, right? It's become an important discussion of ERM processes to be built in the robust mitigation processes.
Right.
So, as a transformation, do I have a strong ERM process? So it could be a process transformation, it could be a workflow transformation, it could be a digital transformation, it could be an overall organization transformation. But you have to define what exactly are you trying to achieve.
Very interesting. So Anil, my last question to you, and I want to come back to startups.
Yes.
We started our conversation, and that's an area that you're very passionate about. And a very large number of startup founders listen to the Brand Called You podcast. What would you advise a startup founder on the subject of transformation and pivoting in case they are not being able to meet their original business plans?
So startup what is a startup? A startup is who's trying to discover a business model. A startup is one who's trying to discover a repeatable, scalable business model. A corporate is one who's already working on a well tried out business model. Right? A small enterprise is again an enterprise which has a standard business model and they're working on that. So between a startup and a scale up and a small enterprise, and this are two things. The startup itself is a discovery mode. Right. So when you look at ideation process, then you look at the product market fit, right? But you have to pivot number of times. And many startups I've been my advisor, we have actually pivoted completely different. What is the B2C model has become a B2B model, right? So and the question is, you should not, the problem is the love of product does not transfer love of business. The guys just love the idea. They just want to go ahead with that. Right? Or a guy loves the product and he's just so passionate product that he forgets to build the right business because he's not passionate about building the business. And then it's just building great business, right? So pivoting has to take place. And the startup founder has to be open that, you know what, I started with an idea, but I think the idea is not going to be what we would define as a interesting, exciting idea. I may have to pivot. He will do that. But otherwise, 92% startup fail in the first 5 years.
Correct.
Okay. Correct. So I don't want to be the 9 out of 10, right? And the biggest problem, again, I keep saying is once they come up with a great product, a lot of failures take place of the inability to build a great business.
Correct.
The product company gap. So I always tell the startup, especially the tech guys who lead the thing, the love of technology is great, but love of business is also important, or more important. Right.
Very well said. And on those wise words, Anil, thank you so much for speaking to me about startups. Thank you for speaking to me at such length about transformation. I think I learned several new things from you on transformation today. Thank you for speaking to me about startups and pivoting. Thank you again and good luck.
Thanks, Prashit. Thanks for having me on the show. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.